Hey gang, this week we'll be looking at my second, or is it third, I can never really decide, favorite Goblin Commander for EDH. This is Grenzo, Dungeon Warden. With a conditional converted mana cost of X, and including at least one black and one red, this little goblin clocks in at 2 power and 2 toughness should you pay 0 for X. 2 mana for a 2-2 is already pretty strong, as it means as long as we keep an opener with a source of each color, Grenzo's going to be knocking heads as early as turn 3. He also comes with 2 abilities, one that occurs when he enters the battlefield, and one that he can activate. His first ability is directly related to the X cost in his converted mana cost. The ability reads, Grenzo, Dungeon Warden, enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. I love this ability. First of all, you don't even need it to cast Grenzo, as depending on how you build your deck, 2 power can often be enough, but he still allows you to go big if that's what you want. Versatility, my friends, is a good thing. His activated ability is a little bit more complicated. It reads, put the bottom card of your library into your graveyard. If it's a creature card with power less than or equal to Grenzo's power, put it onto the battlefield. Okay, I guess it's not that complicated as it synergizes well with his first ability, but it allows us to cheat out creatures for a really good cost. Right off the bat, it's pretty clear that Grenzo EDH deck can be one of 4 things. First, it can be a tribal deck, because, you know, I love tribal and goblins. Second, you can make Grenzo himself into one heck of a threat, either by slamming equipment on him or by using his first ability to pump him up to ridiculous sizes. Third, you get to play with your graveyard in all kinds of fun ways. And fourth, you can cheat out creatures provided you meet certain criteria. That's a lot of options considering we only have to pay 1 red and 1 black for our commander. In most games, you'll want to cast Grenzo on turn 2. Like the majority of decks that I play, my commanders tend to be the focal point of my deck. I know this style isn't for everyone, but it's what gives me the most satisfaction when I play. If you're looking for a commander who's either going to sit in the command zone or just sit in the field and do nothing, you might be better off with Mogi, God of Slaughter. Grenzo is a proactive commander. The earlier we can get him out, the more commander damage he can deal, the more activations we can get, and as I'm sure you know, more is better than less. So we've looked at Grenzo, now let's look at some cards to help our little goblin get there. As Grenzo's second ability cares about what's on the bottom of our library, we want to make sure we can manipulate this. The Scry mechanic can give us a great deal of control when it comes to what we hit with this activated ability. Cards with reusable scry effects like Crystal Ball and Darksteel Pendant allow us to scry to a varied degree for a low activation cost. Along those lines, but slightly different, are cards that allow us to put things from our graveyard back on the bottom. Grenzo doesn't want regrowth effects that return cards to our hand, at least not always. Thankfully, we have access to a few of these cards from over the years, like Junk Troller from the original Ravnica, Canal Dredger from Conspiracy, or Epitaph Golem for the new Shadows of Innistrad deck, all of whom have an ability that allows us to do just that. You can also run Vessel of the Endless Rest as a one-time use effect that doubles as mana ramp. I've seen a few people run Tel Jalad Stylus to some success. It can serve as 2 functions, either serving a valuable creature that can later be brought out cheaply, or to gain an additional enter the battlefield effect from a creature. I'm not the biggest fan of this card because it's a bit of a wonky inclusion, but I'll leave it up to you. Speaking of artifacts, Heartstone is a must in any Grenzo deck worth its spit. Effectively doubling the amount of activations we can get out of Grenzo for only 3 mana, this is most often the card I'll burn a tutor to go find early on. You'll probably also want to run a couple protective artifacts as well, like Lightning Greaves, but if you want to go for maximum flavor, run Cloak and Dagger. Not only does it fit the theme of Grenzo being a goblin rogue, it equips itself to him for free, pumps his power, and grants him Shroud. This is great for 2 mana. But enough about those boring old spells. Just like Kim Kardashian, we also know that Grenzo's obsessed with his bottom. When building your deck, you want to make sure you keep in mind that depending on your game plan, Grenzo will want to focus on a certain amount of power for his creatures. Normally Grenzo isn't about the big fatties unless you build him to be reanimating focused, but more often than not, he's looking for smaller powered creatures. Now, the creatures you run at this low power can vary based on your individual taste, but as I'm sure you know, my particular taste lies in tribal. Some goblins I'd recommend are Murderous Redcap. This little creature can either act as removal for small creatures or as a way to blast a player in the face. He's even better when you notice that he's easily cheated out without needing any additional counters on Grenzo. If that's not enough, Redcap is also part of an infinite combo provided you have a Sack Outlet and Machias the Unhallowed on the field. I'd also recommend running any of the Goblin Lords. These guys are all 2 power and can grant Grenzo haste, additional power and toughness, or land walking abilities. Since we're running black, you actually gain a few more lords than you would if you were just mono red thanks to Lorwyn's goblins. There are also a lot of great creatures that don't have the goblin creature type that I'd begrudgingly run as well. Probably the coolest creature I came across in my search for 2 power creatures was Herald of Leshrac, whatever you want to call it. With a converted mana cost of 7, I don't know if I'd ever run this guy in a normal deck, but being able to cheat him out for only 2 makes me tingly inside. He also helps fuel your future turns as he steals more and more lands from your opponents on every upkeep. Duplicant also sits at the sweet spot with 2 power. He's a hard answer for almost any creature and pretty much a staple in many EDH decks. Flayer of the Hatebound is a great addition to any kind of reanimation deck that runs red. Sure, he can be harder to cheat out with Grenzo, but his triggered ability is good enough to justify hardcasting him. Since Grenzo's ability first puts the bottom card in the graveyard, each creature we cheat out will trigger Flayer. Mindclaw Shaman's Enter the Battlefield effect is incredibly strong, but oftentimes I'm hesitant to include the 5-mana Shaman. Grenzo's ability eliminates this dilemma since he only costs 2 now, and he's a great non-goblin card to consider. If you're worried about taking life loss from some of your reanimation cards like Phyrexian Delver or Reanimate, then adding Grey Merchant of Asphodel to your list probably won't hurt. He's easily my second favorite card from Theros, after Burnished Heart, who's also worth a consideration for this deck. Moving beyond creatures, some notable cards I suggest are: Shadows of the Past is a great card to plop on turn 2 and just continue to gain valuable scries. The activated ability is decent, albeit costly, but we'll mostly be running this just as an additional means to scry every time something dies. Much like Hearthstone, Illusionist Bracers will really crank things up to 11 for any creature with an activated ability. The equip cost places this well below Hearthstone in terms of how much I'd use a tutor to go find it. It nonetheless offers us redundancy in abusing Grenzo though. You'll also want to run a decent amount of card draw, tutors, and board wipes, but I'll leave those suggestions up to you to decide based on your budget. If you're going the Goblin route, I would consider running Goblin Matron or Goblin Recruiter, since it allows you to tutor things to your hand or to the top of your library quite easily. It might seem counterintuitive to tutor something to the top or to your hand since Grenzo's ability cares about the bottom, but they can be valuable tutor cards that allow us to search for a win condition and win out of nowhere. Well gang, that's my take on Grenzo Dungeon Warden. He's a great general for a surprising number of playstyles, so if you're looking for a commander that can be made to play like Voltron, Reanimator, or Tribal, I'd strongly recommend him. You can also check out some of my MTGO gameplay videos. I tend to play Grenzo or Krenko a lot online. The videos highlight a couple really good cards like Mana Echoes and things like that I don't necessarily cover in the primer, but I think are important to see in play. And as always, thank you all for watching, and be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.